Hey everybody, welcome back to the Abundance Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Janice Luke, and I'm accompanied by
April Capri. Happy New Year.
Happy
Look,
New Year again. How are you,
again.
April? Yeah.
I'm so weird. I say Happy New Year for like the entire month of January until it gets old. People be looking at me like,
I
girl.
know. It
I
happens to
don't
me
know. It's
too.
still
Like
fresh.
it is. It's like 2, 3 weeks in, we're still saying Happy New Year. And it's gonna be a great New Year. So and we have a great guest coming on tonight too. So
We really do. We really do. He's amazing. So his story is his life took a transformative turn when he was faced with an immense challenge, and that was his son battling stage 4 cancer. Luckily, his son triumphed. But it also inspired him to make a pivotal commitment to be present for every crucial moment in his son's journey. That dedication led him to reevaluate his work-life balance and prioritize family over wellness as well as over a traditional career. Learning invaluable lessons in focus, intentionality, and productivity during his son's treatment, he discovered a path to greater financial success while working significantly fewer hours than his previous corporate lifestyle allowed. He cracked the code. As the founder of Next, Crest, and Executive Bliss, him and his team empower business leaders to navigate midlife crises, burnout, monotony, and offer strategies for a more fulfilling life without drastic lifestyle changes or financial risks. Look out for his upcoming book, but I'll let him tell y'all about that. We Today we have Kevin Hoover.
all right. I need some of that midlife
I need all of
coaching.
that. I need all of that.
Yeah, so Kevin, hey
Kevin,
Hi
Kevin.
there.
How are you?
Great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
thanks
thanks
for
for coming
being
on.
here.
Yeah, so I was just telling April we need some of that midlife process coaching. So tell us about your
All of that, yeah.
journey.
Where to begin? I think the best journeys start about halfway through the journey, in my
Right.
opinion.
Right?
Um,
Then you realize it's a journey.
yeah, exactly. I think it was just I lived by the society rules that we're all supposed to live by, I suppose, as far as go to school, get out, get a job, plug away, plug away, plug away. And what that model doesn't account for is when life happens to you and when things don't go as according to the book or the plan or the advice. And so while my journey is unconventional, as I think a lot of people's are these days, mine really started with in 2019 when I was well into my 40s and had just become a dad about 3 years earlier. And so I had worked corporate for about 20 years and decided I didn't want to do that, and lived in big cities all over the country, and um, kind of was seeking something and never really found it until necessity brought it to me and I had to find it. So I did the whole corporate thing, and then in 2019 my son was 4 years old, and he was one Saturday we played soccer, we had ice cream for lunch, it was amazing, and the next Saturday we were in ICU with a tumor and total kidney failure. And so
Oh my God.
life happened very quickly for us. And I remember that the Friday morning, it was late in March, so about, almost 4 or 5 years ago. And we went in with a tummy ache. And when you've got a 4 year old, a tummy ache is not an uncommon thing. It's not something you really get overly worried about. You don't really jump to any kind of conclusions except for let's take what we need to take and let's move on with what needs to move on. But we'd been in and out of the ER for about a week, and we went in for scans at 7 a.m. And then by lunch that day, we had entered a whole new world of cancer. And it was just really abrupt. And so when you think about those condensed moments of time, we're talking about, I had two businesses. I was leading a real estate company. I was a business coach. Both were doing very well, but you can imagine I was the guy on my phone at the soccer game, putting the deal together and doing what was needed for my family, or what I thought was needed for my family. And now I'm in this new world of um, questions and new language, new smells, new concerns, you have to be a different kind of husband, different kind of father, different kind of business owner. And it was very uncomfortable for a long time. And so that was kind of where I think my journey really started, as far as really actively pursuing the non-conventional success version for myself. And it was over the next 70 weeks, almost 2 years, we were in and out of the hospital, and I ran my business from the waiting room and from the the kids can't oncology ward and a park and the chapel at Ronald McDonald House and anywhere you can imagine. That's where I was doing business to pay the bills. And I tell people all the time, it sounds really weird, and maybe someone will understand what I'm saying, but in that struggle was the biggest lesson in business and in life that I could ever learn. And it really was this simple fact that for decades, I'd been allocating 40 and 60 hours a week to do jobs that required me to work about 15 or 20 hours.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
The
So like,
mic drop right there.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, it's funny. It just seems like God, sometimes has to give you a wake up call, even though it's so uncomfortable. I can't imagine what you were going through with your son getting
I
sick all of a
know.
sudden. It's like it stops you in your tracks. It
Mm,
stops you, and then you having just to stop everything and just take a whole different turn, and your whole life just looks so different, and you just don't know what's going to happen. But then, you know, it just, I don't know, it grabs your attention. I'm sure that got your attention,
yeah.
took you in a whole new direction. So
It did. It has
wow.
to. I mean, I think, I came up, my grandfather owned a gas station, right?
Mm,
So blue collar, like we went to work and we didn't get paid, and my dad was a businessman later in his life, but, so I wasn't used to not working. My metric was work hard, get paid.
mhm,
Mhm.
That was my metric. And so when my son was diagnosed, I went from 6 days a week, sometimes seven. And my wife and I promised him we would both be at every treatment. We're not going to miss a thing. We're right here by your side. Like, we're not going to, use work as the excuse not to be here.
mhm.
So my 6 day a week went down to about a day and a half, and I was scared because it was highly uncomfortable for me. But what I learned was that my business doubled, going from 6 days when I closed the real estate business and just did coaching. That business doubled in weeks, matter of weeks. And I was actually earning more, doing more, having better results. Everything was just more in a smaller amount of time because I was focused and I had a why behind it. And
Wow,
yeah,
That is awesome.
that was a
bro.
big
And
lesson.
I'm
But
sure it
you're
was
right, our brain usually doesn't work like that. It's like you want more money, you put in
yeah.
more time, more energy, more effort,
Mhm,
more,
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
most of the
Yeah.
time.
You can't show me the course or the coach or the guru or the book or anything that says, hey, stop working 5 days a week, go back to a day a week and you'll make more money. You'll be happy. Like, no one says that, but that's actually true when it's focus time. Like when you're
mhm.
Mhm.
focused for 4 hours, 2 days a week, you will get more done than being half focused or 75% focused 5, 6 days a week. You just will. And then when you put a big why behind it, like, I was doing it so that my family didn't go bankrupt. We started getting those, and we have insurance, but we started getting those bills in. Like, he was life flighted, and that bill came very,
Wow.
very quickly. It was
Mm,
not cheap. It was about
yeah.
$60,000 for that life flight. So that's just a mental. You start processing that while you're like fighting for your son's life, and it's like, okay, it became a lot, but then you really start going through it and you're like, okay, wow, I've been living my life based on a 40-hour week when what's required is a 20-hour week.
Wow. That
So how
is
do I change that?
powerful.
It really
Yeah.
is.
The
Yeah.
how something so tragic, and I'm so glad he's doing better, correct? He's like made
Yes,
it.
yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so
I always try to spoil the story early. My son is 9.
oh,
He's in third grade. He's on a roll. He's doing great.
Good.
good, good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So I meant to spoil the story before we kept going.
So
So thank you.
No,
so
awesome.
it is a powerful story because you were saying that it just helps you to realize what is important, and that you're able to just to focus in, and then you got a whole strategy for people. How it's a lot of people, they need to have that work life balance, not neglect their family so much, but to like focus in and hone in just a couple hours a day, and really be focused, like you said, and just get things done in a more laser focus. So that's a powerful strategy. So
It is
Yeah.
because we get
yeah.
lost in the grind, just like we're on autopilot, like 90 some percent of the day. We're just functioning, functioning, functioning. And I think that's what happened when COVID came out. It sat a lot of people down. And I think that
Hmm.
was like a great reset for a lot of people. But how did you kind of piece that together, and like how do you share those steps with how you did it and made it successful? Because it's like when things kind of got back rolling, we went right back to default settings and the grind continues, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and that's I think that's an important point. You know, we finished our chemo in 2020.
Okay.
So we were in the summer of 2020. So we were a few months into COVID. So, you know, my family was
Oh,
quarantined
wow.
a year before COVID. So it was nothing new to us, you know, but it didn't make it enjoyable. It just meant that we were just accustomed to not going anywhere because of my son. And so when we finished chemo in July of 2020, it was in the middle of COVID. And um I think that um I think as hard as that was, it did bring people back to start asking questions around their work habits and what's possible. You know, do I need to go in the office? Do I need to go to the meetings? What do I need? What do I, you know,
Mhm.
what do I want? You know, and there were a lot of companies out there that were being flexible as far as what they were offering their employees at the time. So I think that was just, it was necessary that we went through that, but my family really looked at it and said, well, you know, I didn't learn anything while I was doing it. It was all just trying a bunch of stuff. And I learned the strategy in reflection. So as we got into COVID, all my friends were like, hey, how do you do this? You know, you've been doing it for a year. How do you do this? And I was like, my simple strategy was every day I'd wake up and say, what's necessary today? Is there a contract? Is there a client meeting? Is there, you know, what has money attached to it in my business? That's what's necessary. I'm only going to do that. I'm not going to change the font on my website again. I'm not going to call you know, do all this marketing stuff. I'm going to do what's necessary. If I only do that, I won the day and I'm going to move on. You know, so it took the mountain of things. If we look at our to-do list, and I've done this actually as research since our you know, coming out of this, where I was like, wow, what did I do to survive that? You know, when you're in it, you're just kind of head down, everything's a blur. You're just doing things, and you don't know
Yeah.
if it's right, wrong, or indifferent. And then you pick your head up and you go, wow, okay. And then a year goes by, and you go, okay, now I can look back and say, well, what did I do? What choice did I make, and did that work? And is that something that I can duplicate? Is that something I could teach? And so the first thing is like, you know, do what's necessary only is the number one principle that got me through that time. Because if it wasn't a client meeting or a contract or something that was attached to the revenue of the business, I deemed it important, but not necessary.
Okay.
Gotcha. So
Right.
it's more like second, like just push it down the list, and if you got to it, you did, and no worries if you didn't.
Yeah.
Right? Is that how you
Yeah.
looked at it?
Like a
Okay.
Yeah.
priority structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and mainly because I didn't have the bandwidth to dwell on a bunch of things that weren't important all day,
Mhm.
you know? And so I
Right.
looked at my to-do list that was at any given time, my to-do list is probably 30 or 40 things, as I imagine most people's are in that range or more.
Mhm.
And as I looked at what's necessary in that 30 or 40 things, it was four things. Only four things were
Wow.
I love
necessary,
it.
Wow.
right?
And wow. That's just, it's so, I have to say powerful and amazing because um it's just how, with everything that's happened to you. I mean, I can't imagine going through that with your son and everything, how you were able to look back and reflect on that. Did you just start like journaling, or as you were reflecting back and how you did things, did you start writing it down, journaling, or
I
how did
wish
you
I
put it?
did.
How did it come
I wish I
together?
did.
So, like,
So a funny story how this came together, how I started reflecting. I reflected out of fear. And so we finished our treatment and my wife and I, it was summertime in our kitchen. We were cooking. We had, you know, our neighbors were over because they were our quarantine family, because the kids and everything like that. And so, my wife kind of looked at me, she said, what are we supposed to do now? Like we're done we finished the cancer thing, like, but our whole life has been like, what do we do now?
mhm,
And it scared me to think we were going to go back, like you said earlier, we were going to go back to the way things were, you know, just back to 6 days a week, back to putting the deal together on the soccer. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go back to the way it was. Like, we didn't go through this for nothing. We got to learn from it. So, my wife said, why don't we sell our house and buy an RV and travel around the country for a little while? And of course,
wow.
that's up my alley, right? I was for it from the get. I was like, yes, let's do that. Let's do that. And then my next thought was, how am I going to run my business from an RV? And then I was like, well, I've been running it from a hospital. What's the difference? I can so it was at that point that I had to reflect and figure out what I did right and wrong so that I could do it intentionally moving forward. Because I wasn't in a crisis. I wasn't in trauma anymore. I was in choice.
Right.
And so I was
Mhm.
like, I want to know the strategy I'm going to need as we move forward in this RV. Um, to run my business. So that's where and granted, I mapped the trip, I drove the truck, I did all those things, and I'd never been in an RV in my life. Never.
That's
Wow.
so
My
cool.
wife hadn't
That's
either,
cool.
so we knew nothing of what we were embarking on. And so from 2021 until February of this year, so February of 23, we lived in an RV and traveled the country helping other cancer families. And having our own
What?
adventures too, but
Mhm.
I really ran my business out of that little RV over 28 states, 14,000 miles, every time zone you can think of. And it was that idea of, what's necessary today, no matter what's going on. We got flat tires, it's broken down, it's cold, whatever's going on, what's necessary. If I do that, I won. So we can move on. And it was that strategy that in reflection, the reason I reflected was because I was about to do this other thing that I was scared to death to do. And I needed some reassurance that I actually knew what I was doing. So I needed to
Mhm.
kind of decode the puzzle a little bit. And that's kind of how I did it. And that kind of carried me through the next 2 years.
Wow.
Oh,
I'm so amazed right now. Like, I
I'm
don't even know what to
impressed.
say. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It was amazing.
That's great.
Yeah, it was
So
amazing.
so you traveled and you said that you helped other cancer families and everything. That in and of itself is also amazing.
It is.
You have other families that are going through the same trauma and everything, but the fact that you were able to, like you said, put your head down, do what you have to do, through the whole thing. A lot
Mhm.
of people, like, that takes quite a lot of strength and quite a lot of focus, and just because the devastation of seeing your child go through something like that, and you being able just to buckle down and then learn from it, looking back and having to kind of, I guess, I don't know if I would say relive it, but even think about it. A lot of people don't even wouldn't even want to relive it or in their thoughts to think about what did I do to for this, for what did I learn out of this situation. So a lot of people want to suppress traumas like
Mhm.
that. So, but the fact that you were able to take something so powerful, what you learned, uh, and then just bring it into fruition, and now that you're helping people like figure out the same kind of similar things. So what
Do
are you
you
working on now with that?
do
I
you
mean,
provide therapy for them?
yeah.
'Cause
I'm
you're a
sorry.
therapist. You provide therapy for the cancer families, or what kind of services do you help them with?
No, it was too close for me to get too involved on the emotional level. So what we did is
Okay.
we created wagons for the kids, and we created, foldable beach wagons basically. And we put
Oh,
pillows and blankets and toys. And we started that before COVID. And it actually during COVID, it became very beneficial because my son would go to treatment and never leave the wagon. So he was sanitary, he was safe. He was in his own little bubble, so to speak. And so we would meet with families and give them, because if you've got a young child, you can imagine we went to the hospital at least once a week, and it was a 2 hour drive for us. And so you're getting your child from the house to the car to the hospital, hospital to car to house, with all the snacks, iPads, puzzle, like everything you can imagine. So the wagon was actually very practical. And my son and wife started that initiative. And at the end of it, my son and we had delivered through our nonprofit over 400 wagons to kids who
wow.
were fighting cancers and family. And so we kind of kept it on that practical, playful, hopeful, positive level. I certainly connected with a bunch of parents along the way where we had genuine parent to parent conversations,
I know
but
what you mean.
I
Yeah,
don't, I think I'm too close to, even if I was a therapist, I think I would be too close to it to provide any kind of therapy for anyone. I don't know, maybe someone could do that, but I don't think I could at this time, at least.
that makes
Um,
sense.
but what I
Yeah,
was able to do is be a part of the wagon thing. That was really a happy moment for us.
right, and you definitely could show your empathy and everything, being living through what the current families were living through as well. So
Right.
that's a great support to
It
know that
is.
that they know that you've been through it, and so you can help them kind of cope in a sense. So that's very
100%.
good. Yeah.
I remember we were in Nashville, Tennessee, and we went to a lot of states, but that was early in our trip. And that the mom, we took my son with him because no one sees the picture of the kid with a full head of hair who's beaten cancer. They don't see that picture in the hospital. You see the bald kids,
Hmm.
you see the struggling, you see the struggle, but you don't see the thriving after. And so one of the
So
moms in
true.
Nashville, we took the wagon in the hospital, met her in the lobby, and she said, the wagon is great, but seeing your son is, I'm gonna get emotional just telling it. Seeing your
Yeah,
son was all I needed.
Oh,
He showed you
that's
showed
so
me a you
powerful.
showed me a picture that's not available to me. And
Right.
that, you know, that in and of itself has stuck with me. And I'm like, well, where else is that happening? Where is there not another picture I can see that I just need to look a little harder and find that, you know? And so again, every lesson I when I do keynotes, I always say everything I'm going to tell you, a 4-year-old taught me, you know?
Wow.
So, and it's the same kind of thing. It's like, you know, he showed another side of his battle and his struggle and something that was really traumatic for a lot of people. He showed a different side of it that mapped a new future, a new possibility. And so when you take that and you put it into the model of success and you say, well, wow, okay, I went through this thing. I didn't do it for nothing. Has that changed my version of success? And is there a different path I can walk to achieve that? And for me, 100%, you know, when I say I ran my business from, you know, half the states in America within a year's time, like that's real time, that's real life story. That's real, that no one tells you that's possible. And I'm not talking about the laptop lifestyle they see on Instagram. I'm talking about real, like I'm a parent, I'm 50,
Yeah.
you know, I'm in an I've got a nonprofit, I've got responsibility. I'm not out just, you know, with no overhead, you know, I've got all the overhead that everyone else has. And I think when you realize, hey, if you want to do that, not only is it possible, there's plenty of people that will help you unpack that of what it looks like and what you need. So that was really the as you extract from trauma, you have to apply it not only to that piece of your life, but looking forward and saying, where does this apply to me 5 years from now?
Mm.
Like how
Yeah.
does that fit in the mold? You know, is that
Yeah.
still the model I want? And so I'm very grateful. I'm very blessed in a lot of ways to be here to tell that story and to be able to look in my future and say, what do I want my 50s to look like? You know, what can I craft that any way I want? Yeah, I can. I've done it. You know,
Wow. That's
I started
awesome.
in my late 40s, but I'm going to do it now for the rest of my life is
Mhm.
recrafting every year as we go based on what I desire for my success.
I
Wow.
think
That's
that's great as opposed to figuring it out like in the middle of doing it. And so the midlife crisis thing, I guess why that's why I asked, like, how do you kind of help people navigate through those? Like just it's a bunch of like a turmoil of emotions and it's a
Mhm.
crazy time in life. And then, you know, Janice, we I ain't gonna say we love a pivot here, but you know, we're familiar with the pivot. How do you
Yeah.
help people kind of pivot from that?
I love this question. So the midlife crisis became my sort of my area of expertise as I was navigating trauma through my midlife and, you know, being a dad and an entrepreneur and all these things. And then what I realized, I was like, why do people hit this crisis mode? You know, what brings on that rut, that crisis, that, you know, what is it? And so I did a ton of research on it and plenty of people have researched it. And I'm not going to give them credit for their research, but just know that it wasn't me that did all this research. I read someone else's research um, primarily because I can't remember their names. But you know, we looked at our basically our 40s. You know, after 35 to 60 is what we consider midlife, and that's the time where you're not really looking for love anymore actively. Like you kind of know who you are, you know what you're looking for, you've already found it, or you found it, lost it, and found a new one. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like there's a lot
Mhm.
of difference. So you're not really looking for that anymore. You pretty much stop pursuing formal education, or really, you like you know what you know, and you're going to use that, and you're going to learn a little bit
Mhm.
more, but you're not really pursuing that knowledge or that experience in any given part of life. You've already done that in your 20s and early 30s. Um, and so we really look at this idea that we stop evolving or we stop desiring evolution in ourselves. And that creates a crisis because that does hit a tipping point where you say enough is enough. I've tolerated this job enough for 10 years and it's not going anywhere and I don't like the people and the money's great, and so what do you do? Well, cliche says that you buy a Corvette, get a gold chain, and go driving around your community, right? Right.
Right.
That's the crisis, you know.
I love it.
So, as the crisis hits, you know, what is the counter of that? How do we manufacture it ourselves, and how do we recognize these things that are going on, and what do we do? And a lot of people think, well, I gotta, you know, leave my partner, leave my spouse, quit my job, get a new car, get a new, like, you don't have to do any of that. Like, it doesn't require this drastic change. It just requires you just constantly be in pursuit of something. And so when you look at your time outside of work, it's like, I ask the question all the time. I say, well, you know, if you don't like your job, what do you do after 5 o'clock, or what do you do on Saturday? And most people say, well, I take the trash out, I mow the grass, I take the kids everywhere, I do this. But what's for you? You know, and so if you look at the spectrum of the week, the midlife crisis is fast tracked. If there's nothing in your schedule that's just for you and that's
Mm.
Mhm.
just for your growth, yeah, you're going to hit a crisis because you feel like you're last. and you feel like there's no
Wow.
room for you to be you, and you've got to give yourself that room. And so I think there's a misconception that there has to be this big drastic change, or maybe a trauma event. You know, in my case, trauma was the awakening. But I think we can also say, I desire not to spend, because, you know, let's face it, I'm 50. I've got 40 more years in me, at least. So when you think of it that way, it's like, wow, okay. You know, some people listening to this might have 60 more years or 70 more years,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you think about this idea of time, it's like you've got to really put yourself against what is reality. And I'm in relatively good health. I eat relatively well. You know, I don't do things I shouldn't be doing. You know, I go to bed at a reasonable hour. I live a pretty boring life by most standards, but that leads me to believe that I could probably, if I am smart about it and nothing bad happens, I could kick it for another 40 years easy. And so what am I going to do with that? You know, am I going to just wait for to be 90 and then no, I don't
Right.
want to wait. So I'll share you know, one of the things that I started thinking about in my 50th birthday's in March, and in August, I was talking with my wife and my son. I was like, what are we going to do? And, you know, I'm a food guy, love food, grew up in the South, both grandmothers cooked. You can imagine what Thanksgiving was like. It was amazing. And that's where I grew up. So food is very important to me. It's kind of the centerpiece of all the memories and things like that. So I was like, well, maybe we'll go out to a nice dinner, you know, have a bottle of wine, do things like that, you know, things that I would do in past. And I was like, well, now that I'm looking at this midlife awakening idea, you know, what would that guy do for his 50th birthday? Would he go out to a nice dinner that he's done time and time again and nothing new? Or would he run an ultra marathon?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you
Cheaper
can
than a
imagine.
Corvette.
Yeah, exactly. A lot cheaper. You know. So,
Yeah.
then you start thinking, you're like, well, is that possible? I'm not a runner. I haven't, you know, I'm now, but I wasn't. You know, what is possible? Is it possible for me to run 32 miles at one time at 50 years old? Yes. It's not easy, and it takes me a little more time to get there than it did when I was in my 20s. But I think when we look at that evolution and say, you know, okay, what do I want my life to look like 12 months from now? And are you challenging yourself in ways that push that? Because we've all been through stuff. And if you look at the stuff you go through and say, that taught me something that I need to apply so that the next 40 years aren't me just waiting for what's inevitably going to happen anyway to happen. I want to live through that. And one of the things that I was telling a client today, I said, you know, you're either growing or dying. You're either
Hmm.
growing or dying.
Hmm. That's so
And
powerful.
as soon as you commit to one or the other, that's the one that will happen.
And I
Wow.
think that's
Yeah.
powerful because
Yeah.
we kind of get into that habit of just getting, day to day, just
Yeah.
get through the day, just get to the next
Hmm.
day, just get through that day and get to the next day. And like we're scared to set goals for ourselves. Well, what's my next year plan? What's my 5-year plan? What's my 10-year plan? And for a lot of
Mhm.
people, like goal setting is just, well, I want to, it's kind of vague. It's not really detailed, or
Right.
you know what I mean? It's not really formatted into a point to where it gives people something to look forward enough to really stick to that.
Mhm.
So do you help people kind of, I guess, visualize it in a way where it makes it attainable for them in like the long
Yes.
term? Okay.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Cool.
It's
Okay.
funny. So I just put out a vision journal. And it's something that I used. I couldn't find anything in the daily planner world, and I'm sure it's out there. I'm going to say I just couldn't find what was working for me.
Okay.
So, you know, when you have a problem like that, what do? You make something that solves your problem. And my big problem was I looked at my daily planners, and I've got a whole stack of them right over there that I've used over the years. And I said, you know what's missing in all this is a book after book and page after page of me doing things for other people.
Mm.
There is
Yeah.
not a single to-do on there that has me involved in it. Not a single one. And I plan what I'm doing for other people first, and then there's not even a spot left for me to plan what I want to do. So I started thinking about that. And so the way that I help people do that is, you know, and sort of my funny tagline is I put the me back in we,
There you
right?
go.
So everything that we do, the journal that I started, the vision is the first thing we plan in your work day is your breaks. What are you going to do at 10 o'clock on your break? I'm going to go in my garden. And so I think when you focus on that, and then you have all your regular to-do stuff, all the meetings and everything else is still there, but there's this big element of what am I doing for me? and you train yourself in that practice over time. And all of a sudden you start asking different questions like, should I go to a nice dinner or should I run an ultra marathon? That seems absurd to even ask. That seems crazy to even be, those are the two choices. There's nothing else that's a choice. It's like dinner or 32 miles on your feet. Those are the extremes that we're going to. But when you, and I've used this particular journal for over a year now, and I've got some people, some clients that have used it. And now the brain is just conditioned to say, yeah, that's totally possible. We got to figure out the logistics and the runway, but yeah, so that is one way that I've learned to help people is to really claim your desires in life, claim your success, your version of success, not based on what they say it should be or what you think it should be, but what really makes you happy. You know, happy is the word that people say, like you said, what do you want out of the next year? I just want to be happy. That's way too vague. What
Yeah.
makes you
Right.
happy? What is it that makes you happy?
Yeah, and a lot of people have difficulty because they're so like they probably don't even take time to even think about these things, you know, about what can I do for me, what am I doing for me, because they're so mixed up in the hustle and bustle and what they have to do for their job, their kids, you know, and
Yep.
whatnot. And they're not even thinking about, okay, what about me? It's not even a thought. So I
Right.
think it's so powerful that you help people to kind of pause and say, you know, hey, slow down. You know, you still have life in you. There's still hope. It's not too late. You know, because
Yeah.
I kind of struggled with that too recently, and me and April met in a mentorship program recently, and um, we both went out on faith, and you know, at our ages too, to go out and do something new and pivot and just think about what about me? What am I gonna? How am I gonna grow myself? And so it's so powerful how it's not too late. So that's awesome
Mm-mm.
how you're
And
helping
it's not
people.
easy. Like
You're
we
right.
Janice and I are still 9 to 5. We're still in the rat
Mm.
race, kind of crawling at the wheel. Like let us
Yeah,
just a little bit,
yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's hard balancing all of that. And I think we talk a lot about mindset here. So
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
kind of untraining your brain and then retraining your brain the right way,
Mhm.
is definitely a journey.
yeah. So,
It
so
is.
you have your planners and everything, but I hear you have a book too. Can you tell us more about that? And
Yeah.
what are
I
you working
can.
on?
I
Okay.
have an upcoming book, and it's called
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's almost a book. It's in those sort of the nitty-gritty phases where we're editing and doing all the fun stuff that no one tells you about when you start to write a book. So
Yeah.
we're doing all that. Yeah, but it's called Midlife Awakening. It's called Escape the Rut, a Midlife Awakening, and um, it's a book that I wanted to write from a creative perspective about strategies of how to avoid the rut that we all tend to experience from time to time during our midlife. And no one's exempt from that. But how do we recognize it? How do we get out of it? How do we make changes? You know, how do we transition our career in our 40s with responsibilities? You know, and how do we get people in our lives to buy into that and support us and believe that we're going to do this thing, you know, and that's a scary thing. And the money's always part of it. So I wrote the book kind of just to say to give reassurance that if we operate on a different system and we have incredible faith in our ability to learn, because I think if you've gotten to a certain point in life, you've proven your ability to learn at
Yeah.
least something, right? I think if you're over 30, you've probably you can learn something. You've learned enough to live
Mhm.
this long. Let's keep
Should
it
have,
going.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think when we realize that and we say, okay, now I'm making smart choices. I'm not going to just unplug what I'm doing and put my family or the people that care for me in jeopardy financially, but I can create a strategic plan over the next 6 months, 18 months, 12 months, whatever it might be, and I can actually have that life I want. And what does that look like? And yes, there's going to be a period of time of juggling a lot of balls and making sure that everything and working nights and being on weekends and things like there will be a period of time of that. But you know, the book really came about as I wanted to give a beacon of hope for someone who's considering, I don't like this and I'm good at that and I
Yeah.
can't quite justify the leap, right? And
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a dad yesterday, and he's in the same situation. He's doing this thing 9 to 5 and he likes it, he's good at it, but it's not a future. He's got kids, and he's got a mortgage and all the stuff. And he said, I haven't decided. I said, you've decided. And he said,
Yeah.
yes, I have. and
No,
and
that's
so
valuable.
Yeah, but then at the end of it, it really was, the fear was, I'm worried I'm going to let my family down. And my point was, I always offer a different perspective. I think everyone can offer a perspective. I said, my perspective is this: you're teaching your kids to tolerate suffering.
Hmm.
Your kids are not, his kids are 9 and 12, around that age. I'm like, they're watching you and they're cueing off your behavior, not your words. And they hear what you tell your wife at the dinner table about what happened at work today. And they hear you say, I would love to do this. And they see your energy, and they feel, kids are very, very in tune with that stuff.
Mhm.
I said, so you've got to decide if the risk is worth your kids understanding that you don't have to suffer in your work. You can take a chance, work your butt off, go for it, get out there, do your thing, say your thing. Isn't that a better model for your kids at that age to live the rest of their lives on than, I didn't have that. I had, go to work, get a paycheck, come home, shut your mouth, go to sleep, get up,
Yep.
go to work, get a
Mhm.
paycheck, eat your
There you
dinner,
go.
that was the only option. No one said, hey, say your thing. No one said that.
Yeah,
Even little, it was like,
absolutely right.
look at that little boy over there. He's being so good in the restaurant. You need to sit down and be quiet too. And it's like, and now as an adult,
Mhm.
all I want to do is be loud, you know?
Yeah.
That's
So,
the
so I,
Wow.
perspective change I think a lot of people need, just in the support and just the option. And, because
yeah,
we feel alone when we don't want to kind of go with the status quo with the majority or whatever. If you don't feel like something is right, but where can people find you?
I am not invisible, but my website is probably the best place. My company is
Okay.
called, my company is called Next Crest. And the website is mynextcrest.com. And that'll have any link you might need. I'm also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, all the places you would find someone like me. That's where I am.
Wow, that's awesome. So I'm going to encourage our listeners to connect with Kevin because he has this book coming up, and I know you have an ebook as well, right? So,
Yes,
um,
indeed. Totally
yeah.
free.
So, oh, free, but
Tell
awesome.
us about the
Yeah.
free ebook offer you have on your website, because I want people to go to your website.
So on the web, I decided to put out a free teaser for the book. And what I did is I went through the book and I took out all the stories, all the entertainment value, and just left you with the cold, raw strategy of how to navigate escape the rut, how to escape the rut. Like, you just left with the strategy. So the ebook is actually, I was advised not to do this. I did it anyway. It's a little over 80 pages. It's totally free. And if you read that and never buy the book, you're going to get the gist of it. If you want the entertainment value, buy the book later. But it is
Awesome.
totally free, and it's
That is
all
so
the
awesome.
strategy to escape the rut.
Awesome. I love
Wow.
it. So yeah, definitely check that out. We'll have all that in our description
Yeah.
of the show and everything. And yeah, y'all need to connect with Kevin. I'm gonna get that ebook too.
I'm definitely
Yeah,
gonna get the ebooks.
yeah,
The rut is not for me. Look,
yeah. And it's so great.
not
I
a
love
fan
your
of the rut.
story. Yeah, I love your story because there's hope for people, like you don't have to settle for mediocrity. It's not over when you just because you're midlife or whatever. So I,
Right.
I think you're the great example for that. And thank you so much for coming on and to
Thank
sharing your
you.
story with us.
No, thank you so much. It was a pleasure
So,
being here.
absolutely. So April, do you have anything else to add before we go about 30 seconds?
Oh, just thank you so much for coming on. And what's your son's name?
Baxley.
Baxley.
Quick.
Mhm.
Shout out to Baxley.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Kevin. It was a pleasure.
Thank
Thank you,
you. My
Kevin.
pleasure.
Thank
Bye,
you all for
everybody.
listening. Bye. You'll have a good night.